Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our conference. So I'm going to touch an intraocular intervention for refractive correction, namely phakic IOLs. And let me state that I usually use star ICLs only. So most of my presentation videos are based on that. So now, whenever you're managing complications of a phakic intraocular lens, there are ways that you can prevent such complications. And that is the basis for doing the procedure. So counseling of the patient is extremely essential to tell them that how to distinguish between an extraocular procedure and an intraocular procedure, why you would like to have an intraocular procedure done in them, the follow-up that they need to have, and what to expect. Now, measurements are of extreme importance, and I usually prefer that the surgeon himself or herself does that. So especially the white to white, we can do it using various instruments, the Pentacam, OpScan, or the IOL Master. But I, as a golden rule, go for the digital white to white. Again, the anterior chamber depth, whether it's from the epithelium or the endothelium, can be taken, but we use only the depth taken from the endothelium for calculation. Again, it's given by various instruments, and these conform more with each other than the white to white measurements. Now, markers in the patient profile, that's true for any refractive procedure. So if you have a patient that you are evaluating and you feel that there's something that's not quite matching up, like this patient, he had a relatively okay looking topography, but you can see that the eye with a lesser refractive error, namely minus 1.5 cylinder at 80 degrees, is the one with lesser vision. So this patient on detail evaluation had a high posterior elevation and therefore was a type of formifructic keratoconus. And such a patient even may not be good for an ICL procedure, as the aberrations may be more. You may do a strengthening procedure like C3R before proceeding after noting that the patient is stable over a period of time. Now, when you actually do the procedure, you can see that the ICL is being inserted. It's a plate haptic lens. So the injection has to come out very slowly. This is to prevent flipping of the lens, especially novice practitioners. So even when 90% of the lens is injected out, there is always a chance that you can slowly roll if the lens is not coming out in the proper direction. You can roll the cartridge and make sure that the lens is delivered the convex side up. So here it is being inserted using Varian markings into the sulcus. Positioning is very important. Now, while you're injecting the lens, if you have an irregular pupil, you would realize that one of the haptics is not tucked inside. So this is a rather compromised pupil, not very dilated. And when one haptic is out, that shows the irregularity. But in case you have a large pupil, sometimes you may miss out regarding the untucked haptic because the pupil seems quite regular. So please be very observant that by the time you end your procedure, both haptics are well tucked inside the sulcus. Now, whenever you're washing out the viscoelastic from chamber, I usually use HPMC rather than thick viscoelastic. Iris disturbances are possible because the pupil may be small, because there may be too much of viscoelastic inside the chamber. So one solution for this is after putting in the ICL, because of maneuvering, if the pupil constricts, please dilate it pharmacologically before ejecting the viscoelastic. And when doing so, it is important that the flow of the viscoelastic, when you use the irrigation fluid, it follows a particular direction and easily comes out of the side port or the main port, for which the side port itself should be slightly larger than what you would do for a cataract surgery, and irrigate the viscoelastic from under the ICL as well. So now this was another patient that presented 3 days after the procedure, was uneventful, and he came with slightly dilated pupils. You can see that the other eye is pretty okay, and he had slight rise of IOP. It was not much, but he was very uncomfortable with that. So this is a really possible thing, the Urey-Zavalia syndrome, that can happen post ICL. It can happen. It usually happens with keratoplasties, especially in ectatic corneas, but it is possible in ICL also. It takes time to recover. Over a period of 6 to 9 months, the pupil did come back to normal, but takes a long time. And meanwhile, the patient has some glare. So basically, intraocular pressure control is all that is required to manage. The patient recovers by himself. There are some pupils that do not come back as well. Now, if an ICL is malpositioned initially or due to some trauma, that's the only condition when I have seen an ICL rotate, then it needs to be rotated back into its original position. So that would require moving the haptics one by one, that is the haptics on one side, one by one, out of the sulcus, but not in front of the iris, and then repositioning them in the new position along the zonules. So again, you go to the other pole and do the same thing with that instead of dialing a lens. So these are small technical differences between what you do with an intraocular lens and with a plate haptic ICL. So this would keep the lens back in position. Now, volts are what we are scared of most with ICLs. So if you have a high volt, there's a chance of angle getting smaller, more of pigment dispersion with the iris rubbing over the surface of the IOL. And this is something you would like to avoid. So anything between 250 and 800 is supposed to be a normal volt. Anything above that comes in the category of high volt. And I've always found a high volt to be more dangerous to a young patient than a lower volt. That might even warrant explantation of the intraocular lens. Now, explantation involves some maneuvering, but this is a very gentle, pliable lens because of which that leaves no sequelae. Just as you tucked it into the sulcus, it can be taken out of the sulcus one haptic at a time, and once when all four haptics are outside, you can gently pull the lens out through the same 3 millimeter incision that you inserted it with. Now, cataracts might happen. So this is a patient who had a trauma around 2 years after the implantation of the ICL. So either keeping the ICL inside, you can insert another lens so that the very high myopes can be dealt with, or you can completely take away the intraocular lens and the ICL and insert a totally new lens. The power calculation is done as if there is no ICL in the eye. And even doing a procedure with the ICL inside is smooth, especially in young patients where the cataract is not very hard. The phaco energy does not damage the ICL. Always remember, you orient the axis of the ICL vertical to your phaco tip. Now, other complications may happen, but keeping an ICL inside and doing a procedure, though not always recommended, sometimes is possible. Like there was this patient, another patient who following trauma had a retinal detachment being a high myope. So here the ICL was retained and a buckling was done. And so this is the procedure being done through the ICL. So visualization is not impaired. That's basically what I wanted to convey. So the 10 commandments I would like to convey is that patient selection is most important. Like in all other forms of refractive procedure, can be offered as a primary procedure. I have had patients who are interested in doing only ICL in spite of being eligible for LASIK. Sizing is very important, preferably done by the surgeon. Never stretch limits, never go to anterior chamber depths that are very low or wide to wides which are very short. Lower walls definitely are preferred to higher ones, as cataract is virtually unseen in the newer models of ICLs, especially because of the material. They are very, very biocompatible and they allow a good flow of aqueous between the natural lens and the ICL, keeping oxygenation of the natural lens intact. Glaucoma is a reality if the patient is not properly screened, especially preoperatively as well as with sizing. Long follow-up of the patient is good practice, mainly for retinal degenerations. All ocular comorbidities, now this is a soothing point, can be treated in spite of the presence of an ICL, not only for an ICL, in spite of any refractive surgeries. And in case you ever have to explant, even that's a smooth procedure. Thank you very much.
Ma'am, do you have any experience with the last one nomogram now? Have you been trying it? I'm here right behind you.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I didn't get the question.
Have you tried the last one nomogram?
No, not the last one. I use only the one that's provided directly by the company. Actually, I don't do it. The calculation is done by the company. The only way I modify it is by reducing the size of the ICL if I feel that the chamber won't accommodate the one recommended by me. That's the only modification I make personally for myself.
We've been using the lasso nomogram now, and we've been able to get very predictable walls.
Mhm.
So sometimes we used to get walls which were a little too low,
Mhm.
less than 250 and all. But once we started incorporating the lasso, you can even select the wall size that you want according to the sizing.
So you feel it's better than the one
Yeah.
suggested by
Yes,
Star.
ma'am.
That's a good take on point, I guess.